Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready for the Wot Supp podcast. With your host, Stu OG Industry Shannon and Will Warren Davey, new school formulator extraordinaire. We're talking all things supplements with insiders, athletes, experts, and more. So sit back, relax, and prepare to find out what's up.
Welcome again to the Wot Supp podcast. I believe this is episode 15, if I'm not mistaken. And we've got a special guest on this episode, someone that, I really looked up to in my early bodybuilding career. When I was first getting into the gym, this guy was a big name in the Australian bodybuilding scene. It is Nick Jones, the founder and creator of GEN-TEC Nutrition, also an elite level bodybuilder himself. He's done pretty much everything there is to do in bodybuilding, and created one of the biggest Aussie supplement brands ever. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Thanks, Stu. Thanks for having me. Thank you, Will. It's a pleasure to be here, boys. And first up, congratulations on your success with the Wot Supp podcast. Only 15 episodes. And you guys are hitting some big numbers and getting a lot of coverage. So well done, boys. You're doing something right. Congrats.
Yeah, well, I think that was something that surprised us as well. You know, we are 15 episodes in. We're already ranking in the top 200 nutrition podcasts in Australia. Our highest ranking position, we did make it into the top 30, which was pretty cool. And for some strange, unknown reason, we're currently ranking in the top 20 nutrition podcasts in Poland. Yes. So shout out to the Polish listeners out there. Thanks so much, guys.
The Lewinsky's and the Podjanowskis, and thanks for tuning in. That's very awesome.
Good on them. I think it's because what's wonderful though is the platforms, because it's evolved organically and we didn't start with any targeted market per se going, we're going to create content to target this demographic. It's all very much just been a passion project that evolved, and it's, I guess the people that we speak to are in the same boat. You can feel it come across when you speak to these people. And when, I guess what we'd love to pick your brain on today is we often have, like Stu alluded to off air before this, is that a lot of our listeners are business owners or aspiring business owners and entrepreneurs that would love to be in a similar space that you've carved out as a predecessor to what a lot of us do now as Aussie brands. So, advice on the business front as well as the athletic front would be really appreciated, mate. If you'd be so kind as to drop some knowledge bombs on us today on some business acumen that you've picked up over the last few decades.
Well, I think
certainly there's a really powerful thing to what you've just said is you just started. You just started with no real agenda. And that's a powerful thing with any business model. Don't overcomplicate it. Start by starting. You'll work it out along the way. Start by starting. So that's a really powerful message you just gave me. And as a big reminder, it's a big one.
I like that.
Yeah.
There's too much structure. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good is one of my favorite sayings that
Yes.
Haglund, I borrow from him. And I think that's very much true when you try and overplan it too much. I think the funnest and most amazing projects were and have been ones that have been done purely just by an idea with passion and just had to run at it for as many decades as it took to make it big. I'm not much of a planner myself. Stu, you might be a bit more of a calculated gentleman, though. I'm not sure.
Well, hey, mate, I think that like the podcast intro says Stu, OG Industry Shannon, but I think my name should be Stu Wing It Shannon, because that's how we've done this whole thing, is just wing it, have fun with it, and people seem to be responding to it. But having guests like yourself on, Nick, really is what's driven that. Me and Will, we're just a couple of Aussie punters. We've got our supplement brands that we're passionate about, that we try and grow. But at the end of the day, having someone on like yourself is really awesome. I think, I'm 33 this year. Anyone who's in kind of my age bracket or a little bit beyond already knows exactly who you are and what you've done. But Nick, could you give us kind of the Nick Jones story, Nick Jones 101, rewind it right back to, your body, I guess the start of you in the gym. Young Nick gets into the gym. Start us from there.
Okay, all right. I'll try not to chew your ear off, because I can, as Will knows, I emceed his bodybuilding show. I can talk the ear off a donkey. So I'll try and condense this a little bit. I actually started training at home when I was 15. I got a set of weights for that's not completely true. I started when I was about 10. My brother and I, my older brother's 18 months older. We had a broomstick and house bricks, and we used to do curls and overhead presses when I was about 10. So I always wanted to be big and muscular as far back as I can remember as a little boy. I loved the look of it, and it really impressed upon me. Whether it's through the He-Man cartoons, I'm a bit of a He-Man tragic, like my mate Justin Wessels. But I remember very vividly, I must have been 3 or 4 years of age. I was on a beach, and there was it might sound a bit strange, there was a really muscular guy walking down the beach with a beautiful looking woman with a baby on her shoulders. And it's one of my earliest memories. It's just a strange thing that impressed upon me, and it's one of my earliest memories. So with those things, and being little growing up, having an older brother who used to beat down on me a little bit, I always wanted to be bigger and more muscular. I played Aussie rules growing up. I grew up in Adelaide, born in the UK, but grew up in Adelaide. So I played Aussie rules in the winter and cricket in the summer. I used to get knocked around a lot playing Aussie rules and needed to be bigger and stronger. So at 15, I started trying to weight train seriously with a weight set. I lasted training at home for about 3 months, I think, in my bedroom, and joined the local gym, which was a fitness centre, Glenelg Spa and Fitness Centre in Adelaide. Oh. And so that, it was a little fitness gym under the footy club, the AFL club, a local league.
I think that's still there, Nick. Actually, I was born in Adelaide myself. Actually, in Glenelg. I think that there might actually still be. I'll check when I'm down there next with family. I'm from like my auntie lives in Glenelg.
Wow. Well, that's where I lived for many years before moving to Sydney. I was in Glenelg for 8 years, and I grew up sort of not far from there. Glenelg Spa and Fitness. I know the original owner passed away many years back. May rest in peace. But yeah, it was under the footy club.
Right.
It was tiny. It was a tiny little place with 2 old universal multi-stations.
Yeah, that's how a lot of the gym. I think that's how a lot of the gyms were at that point in time. I know that we've got a very, very old school, gritty, hardcore gym here at the back of my shop, and we've basically collected pieces of equipment from all old gyms that have closed down. And one of the machines that we have is the original Beaton Park Leisure Centre gym, it's just a big multi-station with about 16 different cable, things on it. So that's really kind of how gyms were, right? You had these multi-stations and maybe a set of dumbbells if you're lucky.
That's exactly right. I had 2 multi-stations, a set of dumbbells, and 1 bench press with a barbell. And I think they had one easy curl bar. So it was a very small place. And it was chrome, right? It was chrome with the black plates with the pins. And so that was the start of it. It was only, and I got a job there. That was it's not one of my first jobs. I was 15, right? So I started fudging my birth certificate and working from the age of 14 at Kmart and Magic Mountain at Glenelg. That would have been gone, Will. It was old. There was an old version of it. It's the beach house now. So I worked there. So I just wanted to earn some money, and get a bit independent from the age of 14. So I started doing that. So from 15, I got a job at the gym. He gave me a job if I promised to go back to school because I'd left school. I got asked to leave school just after year 10. And I had a few different jobs. I was working, I did some brick paving, some roof tiling, worked in a fruit and veg shop. Actually, no, that was after. It was brick paving and roof tiling. And I really sucked because all of my friends were on holidays and my girlfriend, they were all on school holidays all the time and I'm working. So the guy at the gym offered me a part-time job if I went back to school. So I took it, worked at that gym for a little while, but I started training at a bodybuilding gym called Woodlands. My brother introduced me to it. He was working at a bakery. He was an apprentice baker. And one of the guys at the bakery did some bodybuilding training. So when my brother Chris went to the gym with this guy, he was doing this double split routine. He was doing 4 exercises per body part, the old pyramid system. And it was just a revelation. I couldn't believe it. So, and when I went to this bodybuilding style gym, Woodlands, it was, it had 3 squat racks against the back wall. I think 3 bench presses, a Smith machine, dumbbells up to 50 kilo, I think, a whole host of different leg equipment. And that's where I really saw the first real bodybuilders, guys that were training and competing, and that's where it started. That's where the bodybuilding started, really.
It's interesting, Nick, you said that you were asked to leave school in year 10. And, you know, I guess without you really explaining that to me, I make my own assumptions about that. But I find it really interesting that a lot of men, especially that I see who are now successful business people, who are quite passionate, who have these type A personalities, are often mistaken in school for being naughty. And you know, some of that drive and some of that passion can come out in your school age as, you know, as a distraction to the class or whatever it might be. But really, it's just not nurtured properly in the school system. Is that kind of what you felt, or I mean, maybe there was another reason you were kicked out of school altogether?
Yeah. Look, I was just kind of a bad kid, to be honest, really. I went back. I took the job at the gym and went back, and I got asked to leave again after about 3 or 4 months. So it was just, there's a lot to it that, you know, my folks split up when I was very young, and back then there was no other single parents. You know, I was a bit of an odd one out, and so I didn't deal well with a lot of internal anger from my upbringing. So it goes a bit deeper than that. So, you know, because I was angry at my core, and I didn't know why. It's, you know, because my folks split when I was only 6 years old. So I didn't understand it. But if I'd go and party, you know, I'd drink, I'd get aggressive, you know, and with school, it didn't interest me. So I guess it was, I wouldn't say I'm ADD, but I'm probably not far off it in a way. I've been able to harness it to a large degree, as anybody who runs a business or is successful in their chosen field, sport, bodybuilding, you do learn to harness it. But yeah, I was a bit, was really probably a lot of internal anger, and I'd get myself in all sorts of trouble, you know, and violence was fairly normal where I grew up in housing trusts. So, you know, with that, it's just so different now. And God, you know, thank God it is different. I've got 3 young children, so I'm so glad that they're not growing up in the environment that I did. And I'm creating a better situation for them, not through guilt or for any other emotional reason that I want to be a good dad. But I was a wild kid. I was a bit wild.
It's funny. I can really draw some parallels there between yourself and myself. Mine was a little bit different. I was a private schoolboy. My dad actually worked at the school, and you know, I remember in year 10, it was my dad who asked me to leave the school because, well, I mean, you know, I kind of I believed for most of my schooling career that I was bad. You know, I'd always been on detention and all that sort of thing. And kind of later on in life that for me personally, I realized that I was just someone who liked to socialize, and I was just someone who enjoyed, I was passionate, but I was passionate about the things I liked, not about the things that they were telling me. So for me, that's been a driving force in my adulthood. But, you know, it's so funny when I talk to a lot of guys like yourself and other successful business people, they didn't all necessarily finish high school and go and get a university degree. That's not the path that a lot of the guys that I meet have taken.
No, and it's like, and I guess someone who did that, I really regret doing it. I wasted, if I had invested that 4 years that I did my degree and into my current, you know, into something like what I do now, I think I'd be stratospheres ahead of where I am now, you know, because you just get conditioned. You think that's the way you have to go to school, you have to do that well, you have to go to uni, get a degree, do the career that is, and it's just BS. I really thoroughly disagree with the current, you know, with what's expected, I guess, of you now.
What did you study, Will? What degree did you get?
I did a batch science. It majored in environmental chemistry and randomly enough geology as well. Actually, I did that first. Well, I guess I grew up in Newcastle, a mining, massive mining area around the Hunter, and so yeah, that was sort of just expected. You go, okay, it's a mining town. You do a relevant degree and you go forth and progress in that career. But I think something you sort of inadvertently touched on. One thing that really resonated with me from an earlier episode was the idea of having you have to have micro scale obsession, but macro endurance. And I think the fuel source is what that comes down to, right? And so like you said, a lot of people who turn to bodybuilding in their early years, there's usually an external motivator, whether they know it or not. They've got some sort of deep fuel going on for that, which sustains you for a long time. It can be internal anger in your particular case, or it can be just you having a lot of energy, not knowing how to harness it or what have you. And then watching as we progress through life and watch that fuel source shift, I always find fascinating. So in your particular case now, obviously coming full circle, you're saying you want to provide a better better environment for your children to grow up in. So, fuel is still there, different source, which then pushes you through to the next tier, because it takes decades. This doesn't it to become remote, to become successful. The overnight success is 10 years in the making, as Mansell reminded us the other week. I just find it really interesting with that more and more now. What keeps people burning and ticking, and because I really struggled with keeping motivated once I had sort of once I get to the top of the mountain. It sort of plays in my head quite a lot, because you find your next source of motivation and you go forward. It's like when you compete and then you step off stage and you go, oh, what now? Or when you training but not getting ready for a show, and just generally competing, generally training. When you're doing business but with no particular goal, you're doing it for a lifestyle maybe. Yeah, I just really love picking people's brains, and you've been doing this a long time. So, but what do you think? Was it the same? Was bodybuilding the fuel that led you into the supplement, into the supplement empire you've built? Is that what started it per se? Was that obviously they're both very much hand in hand. Was it the same? Was that the same fuel that carried you through into the business life as well, or?
Yes, yeah, great question, Will. I think to a certain degree, yes, yeah, definitely to a certain degree. I mean, once I had, the bodybuilding saved me to a large degree from the path that I was on. So it did save me to a large degree. And again, bodybuilding, it's so metaphorical, and I guess you develop philosophies, and those philosophies evolve and change as you gain more experience through life. But bodybuilding certainly gives us all those teachings. One of the things I first loved about the training was the results that I got, that I could physically see in the mirror, was something that I had control of, that nobody had to tell me what to do. I didn't need a coach. And the motivation and the drive was there, and it was there more so. Yes, I wanted to look big and muscular. That was an ideal that I had in the back of my mind. And I think it's kind of I think there's a primal thing to that as well. So I think it was just the feeling that I got when I trained is what I fell in love with. The feeling that I got more so after a hard workout, after I'd done something and challenged myself, done something that was really tough. And once I'd finished it, that feeling is the same feeling I go back for today. That feeling of satisfaction when I've put myself through the ringer, be it a really hard workout where I hit some PBs or not hit some PBs, but just train really intensely. I get it from my martial art as well. If it's 8 degrees early in the morning, I don't particularly want to get out of bed and go train martial arts, get punched in the face in the park. But, once I've done that and finished it, the feeling of accomplishment, satisfaction, the endorphins, all of the things that go along with it are all there. That's something that kept me going back with the bodybuilding. Did it fuel my business? Again, it was I think when I was around, I got a real scare at 18 years of age. I went to court. I said this in another podcast quite a while back. I went to court and I got a suspended sentence. I nearly went to prison at 18 years of age. And it was just before that. This is something that transformed my life. Not long before that, I was working, or whilst that happened, I was working in the oil field, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So I was living in Adelaide and I'd go to Moomba, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Now, I was in the middle of nowhere. There was floods in the middle of the desert. So we had to be choppered out to the well that we were working on, the oil and gas wells that we were working on. Myself and a Canadian guy who was a very cool guy. I took all my muscle magazines, as I always did. I was training. There was always a gym at the camp when we'd stay at camp, or we'd get to go to a camp to eat and have a shower every day. You'd always get to train. But here there was no camp. So I was training outside. I got these big lengths of pipe, and I'd do walking lunges and squats with big lengths of pipe. We had an outdoor shower. It was just a big tank. So I used to do chins off the outdoor shower. I used to do push-ups. I used to load my backpack with tools and do push-ups. So I'd do this really, cool training routine out in the middle of the desert. It was in the middle of the desert.
It's almost reminiscent of the Rocky when he's training in the barn. I can't remember which Rocky movie it's in, but
yes.
He doesn't use any of the conventional machines. He's got the big log on his shoulders, and
he was getting ready for Drago. That's right. It was like that. And I loved Rocky, and I would have seen that movie by that stage. By the time that had happened, I would have seen that well and truly. I went to the movies and saw Rocky 3 with my dad. I remember on a Saturday. I was about 10, I think. Loved Rocky 3. So when I was reading an article, we lived in a caravan in the middle of the desert. with a generator to give us power, and we worked on the oil wells. I read an article by Frank Zane on meditation. So Frank Zane was my favorite bodybuilder. Frank Zane really impressed upon me because ultimately, being Mr. Olympia 3 times in a row in the late 70s, he was an ultimate physical specimen. Beautiful physique, number one. Number two, he had a degree in experimental psychology. So he's a very intellectual man. He was also into Zen Buddhism and into meditation. So he was a very spiritual man as well. So it really impressed upon me that you could be so balanced, yet so extreme at the same time. And this article on meditation, it's a cliche to say it changed me forever, but it woke me up because I started meditating and I started being able to go within and find answers to all of my questions. And, you know, coming up to court for my 4th assault charge at 18 years of age, fresh-faced kid, good little physique, was training for bodybuilding. You know, my life could have taken a very different path had I not got a suspended sentence and gone inside. I think it would have been a very, very different path. From that point on, I understood that I embarked on as much a spiritual journey and my spiritual development and understanding as much as I did my physical. They were one and the same. I think there are always parallels to both. And I decided, it was after meditating when I was 20, 21, I made a clear decision that I was going to do what I loved and make money doing it. Clear. I remember it well. I remember it as clear as today. I remember exactly where I was sitting, and I remember that decision. And from that point on, to be honest, I didn't get a job. I did work experience. I was 21. I did work experience in a good friend of mine's health food store where I used to buy all my supplements from. I had competed in the teenage Mr. Adelaide, teenage South Australia, and teenage Australia in 91. That was with NABA in 91. And so a long time ago, boys, so you can probably think about where you were, Will, at 91, but I was competing. You were one, right? So yeah, you're making me feel real old now, but I set myself up for that. So that was, you know, I'd experienced bodybuilding and I experienced competition and I'd fallen in love with it, made that decision. So I went to my friend's store and I said, Billy, he's a really good Greek boy, very, very dear friend of mine. I said, I told him my decision. I want to do what I love and make money doing it. Can I come and do some work experience in your shop? He said, sure, Nico, come in. So after about 2 weeks of you know, pricing products and reading all the books, taking the books home from the shop and reading all the books, started to serve a few customers. He gave me a shift or two. And then I went down to Glenelg. There was a health food store in Glenelg. I can't remember the name of it, but Rodney was the owner. And I walked in and I said, I'm looking for work. Because again, back then, there was no internet. There was no digital anything. So again, door knocking was normal for me to go and get a job. And I realized if you were persistent enough and you annoyed someone enough, they would give you a job because it showed how keen you were. I've used that. I've used that tact so many times. So I said to Rodney, you know, I'm looking for work. This is what I'm doing. I'm doing voluntary work at Philly Store at Parkholme. He said, voluntary work? I said, yes, work experience. And he looked at me straight and said, really, you're working for free? And I said, yeah. He goes, oh, can you work Saturdays? I said, yes. And I said, I can work today if you want. Come back Saturday and start work. So I got into the industry like that. That's how I got into it. One thing led to another, as it does with bodybuilding. You do a local show, you do an entry-level show. You know, in the old days, it was very different to people wanting to step on stage and get a pro card the first time on stage these days. But in the old days, you'd do a local show. You'd hope to make the top 3. You'd make the top 3. You'd hope to win it the next year. So you go back and do the local show. Then you'd do the stage show. And you'd progress your way up the state show. Then you'd set your sights on the nationals. Please, I'd love to make top 3 at the nationals. And you'd make top 3 and then you'd train to go and win the nationals. From there, you'd win the nationals. I went to the Mr. Universe, the NABA Universe with Justin in 97. That was 97. We were at the Mr. Universe, Will. So that you were 7. So we did the first NABA Universe and on it went. And my business has taken on the same thing. I started as a distribution business out of my garage. I was distributing, in Adelaide, I was distributing ProLab and Designerway because the importer in Melbourne didn't have a good reach in Adelaide. I had all the contacts. I'd finished working for Musashi after 7 years. I worked for Musashi for 7 years. That was my first repping job, working for a company, was with Musashi and, the distributor in Queensland first, then the company. So again, it took on the same thing as I did the distribution business. I didn't then want to be controlled by these companies because they were running out of stock. I was selling it faster than they could supply me. So I didn't want my business being controlled by someone else. So I started developing the GEN-TEC products. I was still competitive at the time. I was doing the NABA Worlds in 2000. I started GEN-TEC in 99. I was doing the NABA Worlds in 2000. I was preparing for the NABA Universe in 99 when I started the business. So I was still very competitive in bodybuilding while starting GEN-TEC. And again, that developed and evolved as time went on. So, I didn't start with a big marketing budget, didn't start with a marketing team. I didn't have a product development team. There were no contract manufacturers like these days with a food tech that can do a product for you. I would mix up my formulas in my kitchen. I'd take them to a flavor house and go from there to get my formulas.
It's really interesting to kind of hear about, I guess, the early days of the Australian supplement industry, because really these times that you're talking about, this is really the birth of the Australian supplement industry. There was not obviously you've got your Musashis and your stuff like that have been there, but really the industry that we see now, that kind of period that you're talking about is the forefather to all of this stuff. I mean, I started training, when I was very early on in high school, and supplements weren't something that, obviously there wasn't the product range that there is now in my local area anyway. I'm from Wollongong. But, I remember the products that we were using, and it was the older guys that were telling us what we needed to use. And I remember at the time, the deadly combination, the three that you wanted to use was protein, creatine, and HMB.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say liver tablets. I thought you were going to say liver, but that was back.
No. This is I'm talking early 2000s here. That was when I sort of started out. Yeah. And it was protein, creatine, and HMB, and that's kind of what I started on. And that was a great little stack. That really sort of helped me put on some size. What are the kind of supplements that you started out on? What were the first ones that you started on, Nick?
You're setting me up here, Stu. I know you know the answer because we have one. You're setting me up. So the first supplements was when I was 15. I was training at Glenelg Spa and Fitness Centre, and actually the owner distributed Herbalife. So I was looking at the Herbalife and I tried one of the proteins. I didn't like it too much, but I went to the health food store in Glenelg, and Swiss was just a small family business, not like it is these days. So Swiss had a protein powder. It was called Milk and Egg Protein, Swiss Milk and Egg Protein. The flavor was chopped cherry. I thought it was all right. It was probably, would have been horrendous these days if you try to drink it. So I used that, and I'm scanning the shelves, and the lady, it was sort of hippie stuff back then. A health food store was more herbal and crystals. Which
very holistic, right? Very, very holistic.
Right. I was into that anyway. It wasn't a big deal to me. So I'm a bit of a hippie in a bodybuilder's body, strangely enough. But it was Milk and Egg Protein by Swiss, and Nature's Own had a product called Herbal Anabolic Steroids. I thought, these must be good. I'll get those. So that was my first two supplements, Milk and Egg Protein and Herbal Anabolic Steroids.
Well, can you imagine TGA's reaction to that product name right now?
Mate, TGA, ACCC, mate, you'd get sprung up. You'd be hanging from a string. ACCC, both of them. Yes.
Yeah. So, obviously, you moved on from the herbal anabolic steroids and the milk and egg protein. What are the foundation supplements that really you started using when you started seeing good results and stuff like that? Because I think there's this almost fad now to kind of down talk supplements and say, oh, those things don't work, and all this sort of thing. But almost every successful athlete who I've spoken to uses some sort of a supplement regime, whether we're talking about a bodybuilder or a professional sports person or whatever, supplements are a part of what they do. Now, does food make up the basis of everything and really set the foundation for what we do? Sure. But supplements are a part of this stuff, right?
Yeah. My experience with supplements, really sort of went from that to the Joe Weider Anabolic Mega Pack. It was 6 different products. And theoretically, they were probably okay. I remember there was a branch change, there was a liver, there was a multivitamin mineral.
It's crazy they were doing liver subs back then. Sorry to buddy. I just find it really fascinating. And Zane, when you touched on Zane earlier as well, some of the old wisdoms that were around, even if they weren't quite sure of it yet. When you look at how much the liver's involved in, like, you know, it filters something like 7 liters of blood every hour. Like, you know, it's the most, you know, it's responsible for phase 2 detoxification. It's incredibly important for literally every system in the body. And the fact they are looking after liver health first and foremost as a priority, you know, back in the 90s, early tweens, you know, where even you know, it's sort of, it's these things are cyclical, and there is, you know, in a small degree in the bodybuilding circle now, there's obviously liver support in certain areas, but it's just really fascinating. And Zane with the meditation and so on back then, like I found really interesting when you meet a lot of the pro bodybuilders at expos or what have you. A lot of the time, they're the most relaxed, chilled people you've ever met, and it always struck me. And I think it has to do with having lower basal, I guess, cortisol, like being a lot, you know, like very much lower sympathetic arousal, being much more in a parasympathetic state is much more conducive to being anabolic more of the time. Much less muscle wastage. You can survive a prep with more muscle retention. So when you said some people like Zane, who obviously got inside out peeled, you know, was practicing, I can only, you know, and I draw parallels to other pros that I see that are quite, you know, that have, like, look at when you beat like Rolly Winkler and stuff, you know, he's almost asleep standing up most of the time. He's so relaxed. And
same as Ronnie was the same. Ronnie was the master of the ninja sleep, you know. But again, different. Yeah, they're all different times, because you think of Zane's times, and that those liver supplements, they weren't milk thistle and that kind of thing to protect the liver or detox. It was desiccated liver.
Yeah, you were eating liver.
It was beef liver.
Beef liver.
Yeah. So you show me your age there, Will. That was crude, desiccated liver. And the reason, you know, really the strength of that was the B vitamins and the iron content for guys that were training hard. You know, that the natural high level of B vitamins and iron content wasn't so much the protein, because they were probably, actually, they were probably 1 gram tablets. They were big horse tablets, mate. And they stank. It was liver, desiccated liver.
That was massive back there, though, with the desiccated natural DNT forms of thyroid, adrenal tissue as well, like hypothalamic tissue as well. But like liver in particular, I found was really interesting, because they did a case study on the Inuits, actually, the Eskimos. They found they were trying to figure out why they didn't get scurvy despite living on a meat-only diet, and this was related to some stuff with the carnivore diet that's exploded recently. Like I was looking at the background behind that. And I guess where they get the micronutrients from. And 100 grams of liver has more vitamin C than an orange. And it's, it's a massive storage point for a lot of micronutrients, and it's a really fascinating thing. Like eating, like a lot of your organ meats are really phenomenal for you. But I've always found that really interesting. The DNTs, like desiccated organs, are particularly adrenal and adrenal tissue as well, has been a really popular one for the naturopathic guys. It's interesting. But again, I didn't think
I can tell you, I ate a raw goose liver in China when I did. Yeah, I've actually got a video of that, Nick. I'll send it to you. Of me just, mate, I'll tell you what, it was a delicacy. It was like liver sushi, they called it, and it just comes out like this floppy little liver. It's an organ, and they put it on the plate, and you just I picked it up with the chopsticks and just ate the thing whole. But I'll tell you what
was it like?
It tastes like this. What you know, the bin juice that comes out of the garbage bag. It tastes like that smells. It tastes like the bin juice smells. And I was gagging. Like there's a hilarious video. I'll share it with you, Nick. But yeah, hey, look, at least I got my vitamin C in for the week. You know.
There you go. I'd love to see you didn't get sick over there. You see, it probably protected you.
I did, yeah.
You probably ate everything after that.
Well, man, I like to, when I'm traveling overseas, I like to really get right into the culture. You know, I don't do the whole buy the McDonald's or something like that. If I'm in China, I'm eating this stuff, and you know, that probably sounds pretty bad right now with what's going on in the world. But you know, it wasn't a COVID world then. So yeah.
I'm going to use that cultural comment as a segue, actually, because what I think is remarkable about the culture of most people we've interviewed in the last 8 months or so is that people who have, like you said, you've been both a sales rep, worked in store, done the retail, done distribution, done wholesale. I think that's a really invaluable part of it. Like you said, the foot being the on the ground angle of it. I did the same. Most of us have. Stu obviously still owning a retail outlet himself. I started this, working in retail as well. And I think you have to learn your craft, to be able to actually, because how can you provide value to those if you don't know what they're actually asking for, is how I see it. And you can pick it with people who come into your store. Like Stu, you would have had 1,000 reps come in over the last decade and a half, and you can see the ones who have actually done their time and actually know what it's like to be behind the counter, because they're, so they can come in and actually offer relevant things, and actually be relevant in the service they're trying to deliver and so on. So how is your transition though, out of curiosity, Nick, moving from your early days with Musashi there for 7 years? You said you obviously found a sort of affinity for that career path. Was it straight from then into, okay, I'm sick of them running out of stock, I'm going to create my own? Was that when it began? That was the transition from you wholesaling as a sales rep for another brand into your own from there, or was there another few steps in between along the way?
So I was working in the health food stores in Adelaide. I worked in a couple of the health food stores in Adelaide, and I was using a lot of supplements and reading a lot of books. And that's one thing I think it's really important. Like you say, it's so important in any field to go through the steps. It's really important. Even riding a motorbike, start on a 125, get a 250, work up to a 600, then ride 1,000. Don't just go and get the biggest bike. There's so much value in anything in going through the steps. And don't be in a rush. Like as a young guy, especially these days with all the social media influence, there's a lot of pressure, I think, on kids to look like they're ballers, at 21 years of age, and they're wearing Rolexes and driving, AMGs. It's like, slow down, go through the steps. It's not a race. Absorb where you're at. Know where your limitations are. Ask questions to go beyond them. Read information to go beyond them. Like you're saying with reps that are coming in, and you can tell the ones that have walked the walk. Walk the walk. Get in there, walk it. I mean, it's, you really need to experience things. And I think Kai Green talks about being the man in the arena. There's a lot to be said for the man in the arena than the one sitting on the sidelines watching, making comment. Be in it, stumble, fall, make mistakes, learn. It's the way that you learn is to make mistakes. So be in it, go through the steps. I certainly went through a lot of steps from the health food store, the health food stores. I then moved to the Gold Coast when I was 21 with a good mate of mine. And I went for a job for the distributor. Well, again, I did the door knocking. I was in one of the health food stores asking for work. And the lady said, oh, you seem to know a bit about supplements. And I'd won. So what did I'd won, by that stage, I had won the natural. So the INBA was called the ANBF, was Wayne McDonald. I won the ANBF Junior and Open Mr. Australia by then. Hang on. No, sorry. Junior and Open Mr. South Australia. I then went to the Nationals and won the Junior Mr. Australia against a lineup of about 15 guys at the Dallas Brooks Hall in Melbourne. So by that stage, I had a good little physique on me. I'd done, I don't know how many competitions, probably 10 at the age of 21. And I traveled the world as well, backpacking, where I got a lot of information out of Europe and the US as well. Trained at Gold's Venice when I was 21. I went on my own, trained at Gold's Venice. So I went for a job in the health food store, asked for a job, and the lady in there said, you seem to know a bit about sports supplements. I work in sports supplements. My friend is the distributor for Musashi here in Queensland, Steve Powell. Why don't you give him a call? I know he's got a reps job going. So again, I called this guy, said, can I come and see you? And he said, what for? And I said, I believe you got a job going for a rep. And he goes, oh, well, not really. Our rep's just finished, but not really. Not really. And I said, can I come out and see you? And he goes, well, maybe when I'm ready, I'll give you a call. And I said, I'd just love to come and see you. So I pestered him, went and saw him, sat down, and I butchered him for a job. And I remember this sort of interview right at the end. I'd never done it before. I said, Steve, usually when I really enjoy doing something, I become very good at it. And mate, I would love this job. I'd love to do this job. I know I'd really enjoy this job. And with that being the fact, I know I'd be good at it, Steve. I know I'd be good at it if you give me a go, give me a shot. And he sort of laughed at me. He said, no worries, I'll give you a call. So when I left, I called him the next day. I called him every day for about 3 days straight. And in the end, he goes, come in for a trial on Monday. He goes, all right, he did. He got sick of me. He said, come in for a trial on Monday. I said, okay, cool. And then I hung up the phone and I was so excited. And I thought, Monday's a public holiday. I called him back and said, Steve, it's Nick. What? What do you want now? I said, Monday's a public holiday, mate. I'd come. I'd be there. But he goes, come Tuesday. And he hung up the phone. So I butchered my way in there. Couldn't sell. I wasn't a salesperson. I'd never done these sales courses. I wasn't a person at all. He put me on the phones. I was really uncomfortable, did a terrible job. But once he let me out in the field, I quickly realized all of this Musashi, which was a fascinating brand, absolutely fascinating brand. There was a lot of Musashi on the shelves going out of date because all the staff didn't know about it. And I was so fascinated by these free-form amino acids and the formulas that I read and read and read and read and kept reading. And I was fascinated by them. The owner, Tim Horwood, he was a very intelligent guy. He had amino acid powder back in 1983, 84. He started the company. He was like 20 years ahead of the game. Free-form amino acid powder tasted like shit. I mean, it was horrendous.
The leucine alone, right? That stuff tastes like weed killer if you taste it by itself.
Right. Well, the leucine product, it was branch chains. It was called the nourishment. So it was based on the 5 elements, elements in Chinese medicine, because Tim's mum was a herbalist. So that's where he got the 5 formulas from. And a pharmacist, Dr. Barry Finnan, I think he was a head lecturer at Deakin Uni in Melbourne. He developed the formulas with Tim. And it was just absolutely fascinating. But the effect of them when you use them really well was dramatic. And then I traveled around Queensland, and there was some hardcore bodybuilding gyms back then where the guys are big and they're really loading up on gear. And it was interesting. The guys that were loading up on gear, the more free-form amino acids they used, the better the result in building real tissue. And these were guys that were really pushing the boundaries and knew their stuff, and they swore by using high levels of free-form amino acids.
It makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Yeah, with like elevated protein synthesis being the main sort of, positive, I suppose, of enhancements. And if you're going to, but you can turn the key for mTOR, but if you haven't got the substrate there, what are you going to do with it? Exactly. You can't have nitrogen retention without nitrogen. Exactly. More amino acids, the better. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that's right. And there's so much interesting research. Like we could go down the rabbit hole. You'd love it, Will, if I went down the rabbit hole with some of the people I spoke to over the years and the conversations we had. But from top guys in the US, because Tim sort of traveled the world to see what everybody else was doing with supplementation. So he became friends with Al Vermeil and Al Miller. They were top strength coaches, one at the Chicago Bulls, the other one was the New York Giants at the time. He went to Bulgaria and visited the weightlifters to see what they were doing. And he said their training facility wasn't like a gym, it was like a hospital with some weight training rooms in it. He said it was phenomenal, but no one was doing what he was doing with free-form amino acid powder back then. It was quite revolutionary at the time, and that is where I learned so much about amino acids. That's where I learned so much about them. And so I repped there for Steve for 2.5 years. Did a great job. I just went around. I worked out if I educate the people in stores what this stuff is, it'll start selling. If consumers can use this properly at the right times, they'll get a result. So that's what happened. And he tripled his sales in the 2 years I was there. Then I got a job as state manager back in Adelaide. So I moved back to Adelaide or South Australia as a state manager for the company. So I wasn't working he was the last of the distributors. They had offices around Australia. So I'm going back 93 to 95, 96. I moved back to Adelaide. While I was with him, I won the 95 IFBB Mr. Gold Coast, middleweight and overall. It was my first non-tested show. After all the tested shows, I went to the Gold Coast. Everyone's blowing up, looking big. I thought, I want a part of this. And my curiosity got the better of me. So I jumped over to the dark side up there and competed with the IFBB. I did the IFBB Mr. Gold Coast. And my good friend now, Ari Hamalainen, Ari that runs the WBFF on the Gold Coast, Ari and I competed against each other at those shows. So again, there's so many guys with so many great stories in the industry that, I know them as pimply face bodybuilders, and they know me as a pimply face bodybuilder, struggling and, experimenting and falling and failing and tearing things and competing. And, it was.
I really love what you said about, just taking your time to do the time. Yeah. I think that
I still am.
I know. And I really for me, some of my fondest memories are when I was an apprentice landscaper making, $250 a week. I could afford my gym membership. I could afford some chicken and rice, my tub of protein, and, I was scraping by. And, I lived with a couple of buddies and we shared rent. And I learned so much about my body and so much about how to do a lot with little in that time. It's like, I'm so glad I didn't grow up in an era where I was expected to be driving a Bentley at that age.
Yeah.
You know, my car was in the mechanic more than it was on the road.
Yeah.
But I love that. And I love that I did that time and I learned about my body, you know, using chicken, rice, sometimes baked beans, sometimes 2-minute noodles, you know, whatever I could afford at the time. There's so much to be said for really doing that time, and not just doing it, really living it and enjoying it. And it's so funny. You think of those struggle times when you're in them as, I'd love to be out of this. I'd love to be able to, you know, afford the, you know, the most expensive supplements on the market. And I'd love to just be able to afford all the food that I want. And it's like, when you get to that point, you look back at those times as the good old days.
Oh yeah, I'm still in the good old days. I had my my credit card declined buying a Maxi Bond about a year ago. So I'm still in the growth phase, people. I'm still hurting, but I'll catch you guys up soon. You got a few years on me, but I do love that common theme though with of like everyone just has to just love the suck for a while, right? Like, you know, like when we had between having Izza on the other week again, he did a full, you know, he did his full degree as a lawyer, you know, practiced as a lawyer to the point where he gave himself Crohn's from stress. Mental, he was around since 05 in Adelaide as well, an Adelaide lad like yourself. You know, in 05 is, you know, everyone goes, oh yeah, he's crushing, he's going really well. It's 15 years, fair call. You know, like, but people were okay with being broke in the 90s. I don't know what it is now. No one thinks it's okay to not be crushing it every day. But
well, it's social media. Will, exactly what it is social media, you know, and it's all BS. It's all rubbish. It's all rubbish. It's all a highlight reel at best. But you know, it's BS most of the time.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
I
right.
saw a good thing on social media when I first started looking at it quite a few years back, and there was some guy sitting on the beach having a Corona, and his caption was something like, I don't know what all you suckers are doing, or something like that. And his mate goes, you go, get stuff, Scotty. We all know you'll be stacking shelves at Coles on Monday night. I saw that very early. I'm like, you know, at best that's what it is. But it's, you know, and the thing is, we're still, you know, I think, Will, we're still going through it. Like, I've got new challenges, new stresses. I'm not financially secure by any stretch. You know, I'm always evolving and trying to grow my business. We've all just come through this COVID period. Some of us going back here, well, in Melbourne, they're all going back into it, you know. So it's, you know, I've got 3 young children. I've got mortgages. You know, you're juggling your challenges, and it's a good way to perceive them instead of problems and troubles and issues. Challenges, you will always have them. And this is the metaphorical nature of bodybuilding that I mentioned at the very start, was stress causes growth. We know that better than anyone. Stress that we put on our muscles causes them to adapt and grow. We need some stress to be able to grow, right? We need these challenges in order to grow. And life doesn't ever throw you a shortage of challenges, no matter what you think someone's going through. I look at someone like Sylvester Stallone, you know, because I was watching First Blood and Rambo and the Rocky movies, and I just think that guy's got it together, you know. What an amazing guy. He's got his shit together. But then when you look into him, the guy lost his son to suicide. His son was 30 years old. I didn't even know he had a son. I see his three gorgeous daughters on social media. He had a son committed suicide at the age of 30. He went broke and had to rebuild himself through Bollywood. So, you know, no matter what you think, oh, he's killing it. Even Izzy, you go, oh, he's killing it. He's killing it. You know, he might be financially, but, you know, the personal relationships, the health struggles that people go through, life will keep throwing these curveballs at you and their challenges. And, you know, you do your best with them. You know, I speak to Simon Reeves from ASN, another guy who's successful in the industry that came from nothing.
Yep.
Simon's the most resilient person I think I know.
Yeah, he's remarkable. He sat down with me last year. It was about 3 weeks ago. I sat down for a coffee. I was speaking to him yesterday. He was amazing. He sat down and actually had a coffee with me to talk shop during the middle of his chemo. Like,
yeah,
and
wow.
Like, props, respect. Like, if you're that, like, just that'll stick with me forever. I think. Like, when you're at that stage where that's hustle. Like, yeah, people can talk about it, but if you're in the middle of it, you know, literally the day before, I just had a treatment and met me to chat about shop, and I thought, wow, that's goals, isn't it?
Simon's a bull. You know, we share the same martial art. He's been doing it a lot longer than I have, but he's a bull. I choose when to be a bull. I like to find a bit more balance, but Simon is the most resilient guy I know, and he's just a bull. You know, I choose when to be a bull. I've burnt out before, so I choose a bit more wisely.
That's a good point, the burnout part, right? Because we're in a culture now and I think socials have done it a lot with the Gary V's and stuff, and the Cardones and stuff. And like Arnie did it really well for our industry as well. You know, sleep faster, you know, is the idea and stuff. And people, it's trendy to work 18 hour days.
Doesn't work for everyone, Will.
No, people, not everyone can sustain that level of intensity without, and you know, So I often wonder that though. But everyone has a different stance on that. So I find what you've been doing this for a very long time. You've had the endurance to go for decades in this space. Much of it running your own show, which is, if anything, far more intense, I think, than you know, working for someone else's. So what would you, if a lot of our listeners being young guys hoping to be in a similar position one day, or starting their own startups, etc. What were some tips you could give to those guys, or younger Nick, if he was trying to start again now?
I've probably got a lot of value I could add, because I burnt out badly twice. You know, I suffered chronic fatigue syndrome, not once but twice. So in my early teens, I got glandular fever when I was 14. Had a couple of months off school. I remember being very sick and completely fatigued, and all the tissue came off my body. And bodybuilding helped me rebuild and build some muscle back on my body as well. Slowly. But at the age of 21, I had my first bout of chronic fatigue syndrome, which the doctors, the GPs at the time, just called it a relapse of glandular fever, or relapse of Epstein-Barr virus. So the Epstein-Barr virus stays in your system as a low-grade virus for your whole life. That's what they say. I have never accepted that. I believe I can clear it. So the biggest thing for me with good health has been a strong immune system. Strong immunity that's been my biggest focus and biggest marker of good health. And I find vitamin C imperative, as simple as it is, vitamin C. When you're feeling run down, I'll push it up to, you know, sort of 8 grams a day when I'm getting a bit run down. Otherwise, I'll use 2 to 4 grams most days. Great for tissue repair, supporting lymphatic system, the immune system. CoQ10 is another biggie for the immune system. I'm a big user of coenzyme Q10. They're biggies. I go on and off my colostrum, using that in the morning. My gut health product, I mix with colostrum. Again, I go on and off that. But yeah, I think I've burnt out twice. And the last time was after my last Mr. Universe contest in 2002. I did 5 Mr. Universes. I was so hungry to win that Mr. Universe title. After doing the 97 with Justin, our first experience over there on the Australian team, I placed 4th in my class, in class 4. It was a bit of an easier lineup that year. 98, I went back and got 3rd. 99 is when I first started Gentech, and I improved that much. I thought I was going to win it. The lineup was crazy. I placed 4th, and I was happy to place 4th. 2 guys that didn't even make the top 6 turned IFBB Pro 2 weeks later at the British. And one of them placed just behind NASA at his first British Grand Prix. 3 weeks after the show, I competed with him in. Colin Wright and Mike King. So that was an amazing lineup. The NABA Universe in 99, it was amazing. So I kept going to the Mr. Universe, and the highest I got was a 2nd. 2002, I placed 2nd. After that, I hit the wall. Chronic fatigue syndrome, didn't compete for 4 years, didn't really leave the house much for 6 months, didn't work for 12 months. So I burnt out. I have absolutely burnt out twice. Once really, I thought that was it. 4 years off the stage, from 2002, the Universe, to my comeback as a natural bodybuilder in 2006 with Muscle Mania. I did Muscle Mania in 2006. So I can tell you, not everybody can sleep faster. Not every, Jocko Willink. Jocko's got that cool podcast.
Yeah. Very familiar.
Jocko's a beast. He's an ex-military guy. So I wouldn't have lasted in the military. Not because I don't have a strong mind. My mind is too strong. I'll kill my body, which I just about did. With the intensity I used to train at, the amount of stress I used to put myself under, the level of training I'd go through, the dieting I'd go through. I competed year in, year out, many years for many years at an international level, and I simply burnt out. That Epstein-Barr virus got strong again. All of my systems were crashing and burning, and it wasn't from steroid abuse. I can't even say that. The steroid wasn't from steroid abuse.
Even if anything, that's a largely misunderstood thing. It's probably something we'll touch on in future episodes, I think, because if anything, that's a massive parasympathetic driver. Exactly. It's the only thing that allows you to get through a lot of things. Like a lot of people, if you look at so many things that are linked to optimal hormonal levels, or in this particular case, supra physiological, so above optimal. Things like immune system, very strong. Cognitive function, it prevents things like Alzheimer's, degenerative, cognitive diseases. Really, really positive in a lot of areas. But the big thing that I find really amazing is higher testosterone is obviously linked to lower cortisol. They're antagonistic hormones in the HPT axis. So when you have one much higher, it's the other way. So obviously there's a bit of hepatic stress on some particular compounds, but overall it should, if anything, probably be the thing that stopped you burning out sooner. I would put it together. It's remarkably therapeutic despite the stigma. Unfortunately, yeah,
100%. I think obviously, like you said, we'll get into that. We've actually Nick got Bill Llewellyn coming on the show very soon, who writes the the Anabolic series, the Anabolics Bible. I don't know if you've heard of Anabolics. Well, there's Anabolics first edition all the way up to 11th edition now is the most recent one.
Right.
But Bill Llewellyn basically writes.
Bill Llewellyn. Yes. Yeah. I've got his. That was probably his first one.
Yeah. So he writes the book on anabolics. We have him coming on the show, so we'll chat about all that stuff when he's on, which should be.
How old is he? Would he be 60?
A little bit younger. Bill's, I think, in his mid-50s now.
Gotcha.
But he started when he was very young, looking into anabolic compounds and basically putting all this stuff together and really getting deep into the research and the history and all that sort of stuff. But I'd like to ask you, Nick, I'd really like to get into the Gentech stuff a little bit more now. Obviously, phenomenal career in bodybuilding, and I suppose that kind of sets the platform and sets the scene for this phenomenal brand that you've created, which is Gentech. Did that burnout that you had play into how you developed some of the supplements, or what's the ethos behind Gentech? What did you want to have Gentech stand for, and how did you go about that?
Ultimately, I wanted to know what I was putting in my body, even before the burnout. I'm always big on quality. No matter what it is, if it's not quality, it's not worth having. Certainly not worth putting into your body. Because even these days, all the stuff on the black market these days, I wouldn't touch it. I spend too much time, effort, energy, and money on being really well, really healthy than to put something in my body that I don't know what it is and I don't trust. Won't do it. So that was really the driving force on, why I wanted to do Gentech. One was certainly to be in control of my own business and not have, companies run me out of stock and affect my income. But it was also to know exactly the quality of raw materials that was in my branched chains product, that was in my creatine monohydrate, that was in my glutamine, that was in my proteins. I wanted to know I was getting the best quality. So the biggest thing for me is quality, because yes, formulations are important. Yes, they are. But I think what makes a great product stand alone from a not so great product is the quality of raw materials. Now, the issue with that is the cost in those raw materials is often much higher, sometimes 3 times. When you're looking at something like Creapure is about, to be ruthlessly honest, about $17 a kilo at the moment, 18 a kilo. You can buy creatine for as cheap as $5 to $6 a kilo.
Well, I've always been happy with 200 mesh micronized, but I've seen people just selling a tub of creatine and it's 100 mesh at best, and you can tell when you open the tub. It looks like cottage cheese. It doesn't mix properly. There's sandy stuff in the bottom, and then the absorption. The bioavailability is lower as well, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, the micron size, it's important to a certain point. The 100 mesh stuff will probably irritate the gut, and you'll be sitting on the toilet. And people, and creatine gets a bad name because of the poorer quality stuff. So the thing with 200 mesh and even different quality amino acids, really the difference in quality is the impurity levels. So the more cheaply manufactured a product is, yes, the source of where it comes from, whether it's synthetic or derived from hair or duck feather or if it's naturally fermented from glucose or seed is usually the best quality. But then the filtration processes that amino acid or the creatine goes through. So it's really the impurity levels. I want the impurity levels to be as low as possible in all of my raw materials that I put into my formulation. I don't want my supplements to overload my liver with Will talking about liver before, I don't want them to overload my liver. I want them to improve my health as well as to improve my performance, my recovery, and my body composition. So I've always got that health factor in mind and quality in mind when I'm building Gentech products. And really, when I'm building a product, I've always relied a lot on personal experience and anecdotal evidence. I look at those two things first because I didn't get a degree like Will. And this is one thing that's great about university that certainly don't turn your nose up at, is it shows you how to look at research. It shows you how to be discerning with research. It shows you how to, they teach you how to argue, which can be frustrating for the lay person, but gets you to argue in an educated way and to debate. Debate's a better word. I'm taking it.
It teaches you how to learn, though, is what I found, because geology is obviously unrelated to our current field, and but by all accounts, being able to trawl through bulk data is handy.
Massively. Well, don't underestimate that. So, because when it comes to looking at research, which is the third and final and just as important thing that I do when developing a product, when it comes to looking at the research, I don't do it. I get Dana Visovich, our biochemist, to do it. I used to do it. I'd bumble my way through Google Scholar and I'd work it out. It was not that hard, to be honest, when you understood some certain terminology. But it would be timely for me to look through a trial to work out that it's rubbish, that the trial itself is rubbish. It'd take me all this time to look through it and go, this doesn't make sense. This is crap. It's not applicable to the real world, to someone that's training with good nutrition, that's, trying to elicit a growth response from increased strength. It doesn't make sense to me. So I'd get Dana Visovich to sift through it all. The research we use and the research we cite with our formulations and ingredients is Cochrane at best, or certainly peer reviewed. Dane is brilliant. Dane's got about 5 degrees. He's got biochem, pharmacology, exercise science, nutrition and dietetics, complementary medicine. He's got a master's in complementary medicine. So Dane's a brilliant guy. He's one of the top guys now at Queensland Uni, I think he's at. He's landed himself a great job and he deserves it. He's a brilliant young guy. So any of our research-based documentation and articles, which we have on most of our products, Dane writes them. And again, we don't cherry pick it. All of the big no-nos that most lay people wouldn't know about, they go, oh, that's scientific, like the vegan movie, The Game Changers. Whoa, that's scientific. No, it's not. Absolutely not. When you're talking to someone who is educated and who is scientific, there's some big no-nos that you just don't do. So again, when we use the research and cite the research, it's peer-reviewed or Cochrane trials, and again, Dane said, Nick, sort of 60% of research, you can throw it in the bin. I said, that high? And he goes, oh, I'm being generous. It's probably higher.
Yeah, well, of all the Gentech products that exist, and there is some really great ones, which product for you are you proudest of? Which product is your little, your little baby that you say, this one is the one that I'm totally in love with?
Easy. P2P.
I was going to say
P2P. I was going to say as well. That's the one that I like best as well.
I'm gonna flip that question. I'm curious. So you had a big background in, by the sounds of it, working in a lot of health food stores when you started. So obviously the vitamin and naturopathy and herbal game was strong in that scenery. We're in the current space, and then you're brushing with having several burnouts and probably some adrenal fatigue by the sounds of it. Yes. I find that very interesting. Did you ever dabble a great deal in the botanicals and stuff with some of your earlier products per se, or have you gone more the amino acid route? I know I see a presence of glutamines and creatines. In particularly P2P, one of my go-to interests. I just find that interesting. Did you, considering your background, was that something you've always sort of ever formulated in, or have you just got products that you enjoy that you use anyway?
Yeah, only a little bit. I guess it's one of those things where you stay in your lane to a certain degree. And I'm not an expert with herbs, but I'm fascinated by them, and I think they're extraordinarily powerful, particularly if your body's working well and you're healthy, predominantly your liver. So I think they're very, very, very powerful. I always use things like milk thistle back in the years where I was cycling and so forth. We'd use saw palmetto when we were on, along with milk thistle. We'd keep the saw palmetto when we're off a lot of the time as well to protect the prostate. There were certain learnings that I went through as a bodybuilder, but certain learnings I went through, overcoming chronic fatigue with all the adaptogenic herbs.
Yes, yeah.
That have become really popular in our space today. The only one that I used a lot of was the Tribulus. And again, the Tribulus I find Tribulus fascinating, and the research is with the Bulgarian raw material, but for good reason. The soil in Bulgaria gives that plant some different saponins that we don't get in Australia or they get in India. So we use the Bulgarian Tribulus. Dane found some interesting stuff. Something I found interesting about Tribulus, because it's really, does it increase your testosterone? Maybe, maybe not, and the so-called trials that the Bulgarian company Tribistan did, they were really positive trials, but they were funded, okay? And as you know, your testosterone levels vary so much at different times throughout the day anyway. So to say they've increased by 100% after taking this product, it might be your natural circadian rhythm. There's a whole bunch of factors as to the timing you took the bloods. But, does it increase testosterone? It may. It may not. It may in some, it may not in others. But it's certainly a male tonic from the form of, for a whole host of reasons. Something I found fascinating, it was one of the saponins in Tribulus, in the Bulgarian Tribulus, binds to androgen receptors on brain tissue. So the first time I used my old liquid formula was great, worked well, just tasted disgusting. So I've changed it to capsule. It's a liquid gel cap. And again, they're TGA listed. So I know quite a bit about the TGA situation and what it takes to list a product and what deems it listable and what deems it a supplementary sports food as the laws or code stands at the moment. But the Tribulus I found absolutely fascinating. And when I first used my trial product of capsule, it was like using DHEA, where I took it pre-training. Because being a tonic, you should just naturally feel it build up in your system over a week or 2 weeks. You should notice an increase in energy, an increase in libido, an increase in drive. But certainly half an hour after using it, I was tearing the gym apart. And I'm like, nah, must be placebo. I'm hoping this product is that good. But when I read that, I thought, geez, that makes sense. That the particular saponin binds to androgen receptors on the brain. So you take it, you feel like your androgens have increased. Your central nervous system is signaling androgens have increased in the body. So
100%. And Tribulus is one of them ones. I love it as well. Unfortunately, you have to come head to head with the keyboard warriors a lot on that one because of, as you said, there's conflicting studies. Yeah. Some of the studies that we look at are very exciting. Some of the studies we look at, not so much, where, the placebo group is as effective or more effective than the active group. But for me personally, and this comes back to what you were talking about, anecdotal evidence, when I was a young budding bodybuilder, natural, and I was natural for, my first 7 or 8 years of training, Tribulus was one of the things that was like, it was really exciting for the natural guys. And we used to go down and see the local naturopath and we would get ourselves a bottle of Tribulus. Like you said, it was a solution, and a bottle of red clover.
Yes.
They were the two things that we would use together. And for me, I don't know whether it's tied to that nostalgia as well, but when I use Tribulus, I feel fantastic. And it's exactly what you said. I have these incredible sessions. I notice more muscle mass, and I've used Tribulus alongside, enhancements as well throughout my bodybuilding career. And I've found that to work very well together. But
it's quite good. I think that's the it's quite a potent luteinizing because it's not particularly good. Like, I guess it works indirectly to do it, and the reason it works well with enhancements as well is because it'll increase free test. I think it's good to have in formulas, not so much as the primary thing to bump androgens per se. I think it's in a closed system, and like you said, Nick, there's a lot of variables in daily levels. Particularly if you're in a stressful job like all three of us tend to occupy. So that one's tricky, but in particular alongside other things. It's really good at utilizing a free test. And I guess if you're putting an exogenous hormone in well above natural levels, it's always good to actually, you're looking at what you're utilizing at the end of the day. Otherwise, it might go through, 5-hour reductase, hit DHT, or it might fling off to estrogen, whatever. But if you can increase the free amount, that's quite effective. And also the felt effect, I'll agree. Like we always talk about this heaps, Stu, Supps that you feel, right? Like that's the fun part. We're in a game where you can feel things, and Tribulus is one of those things you feel. Like, you have it, whether it works or not, but it doesn't matter.
We always say this, we love our data. We love looking at breakdowns. We love looking at dosages. We love looking at the research, at the papers, at the peer-reviewed studies, clinical trials. But we also say, at some point in time, you just have to drink the thing. You know, at some point in time, you have to take it and say, do I like the way that feels?
Yes.
Do I like the result that I get from that? And for me, that's really the fun part, because before I, before I got into the science of it, before I really, had done my molecular biology and all that stuff, I was just interested in trying supplements that I like the feel of. Yeah. And at that point in time, everything was a proprietary blend anyway. So we didn't know what was in it. Like, I remember when I first went to like you said, it was a health food store. It wasn't what we call a sup store now. And you had like Hawley's, you had, you had Hawley's, you had your BSN that was obviously imported from the US. I think we had Redback Protein was one that was out at the time, and Musashi. And that was really all that was available at my local one. So for me, it was like, all right, let's grab this thing. Let's take it. Let's train for 6 to 8 weeks and see if I notice any changes. And that was really fun. It was almost like this self-experimentation process that the young guys aren't doing anymore. They're just watching a YouTube video, seeing a review. This isn't clinically dosed for, whatever it might be. Well, scrap it. I'm not going to try that one. But I think there's really something to be said for just picking up a tub and giving the thing a go and seeing how it feels.
Yeah, I agree 100%, Stu. That's how I learned about my bodybuilding. And back in my time with bodybuilding, I'd certainly learn from the older guys at the gym that were competing, but it was always like that. It was trial and error. I mean, you'd have to educate yourself to a certain point, and we used to do it through books. And then you just put some protocols in place and measure it, see what happened. And if you weren't strict enough, I mean, we all knew how much we were bench pressing, how much we were rowing, how much we were squatting, all the basic compounds, whether you kept a diary or not, which I did for many years. Even if you didn't, you'd know what you're doing. You'd know whether you're getting stronger. If you're getting stronger, you're getting bigger. So, whatever you're doing, supplementation, a supplement you just added, or something you changed in your nutrition, yes, it was helping. It was helping your performance. And you're obviously recovering well enough because you were getting stronger the following week. So I agree. And that's how we learn. That's how we learn, trial and error. With a bit of base knowledge, put a protocol together and try it for 6 or 8 weeks.
I think that's the beautiful thing about bodybuilders as well is, without being a controlled study, we implement a lot of controls on ourselves that do not change. So our diet, generally speaking, we eat the same meals every single day, day in, day out for 6 months at a time. We go and do the same training every single day for, 12 to 16 weeks at a time. So the natural controls are already there for a bodybuilder because we live a totally controlled lifestyle. It takes a lot of the variables out of it that you wouldn't see in the general populace. So as you said, we know for ourselves, my bench press is going up. I could tell you right now what I'm benching. And if you give me a supplement and I see a change in 6 to 8 weeks, I know that the only thing that's changed in my life is that supplement because I've been eating chicken, rice, broccoli, salmon, this, that for the last 3 years. I know nothing else has changed. It's a very cool population to kind of experiment on because we are so controlled, and it takes some of the complications out of what you would normally need to look at in a proper setup trial.
Yeah, and you wouldn't. That's the whole thing. You won't get a research trial that is that controlled. It just won't happen where all those parameters are controlled. It doesn't happen. You'd have to put, a dozen, 20, 30 people in a house with a gym, and you'd have to feed them their specific meals for a 12-week period to be able to replicate what we can do on ourselves and to get that anecdotal evidence. So, and it's why
it's so hard to get.
Give it a try, put it into practice and see what happens.
That's why it's tricky to get so much relevant data too, Nick. Like you said, a lot of it you can throw out essentially because a lot of it is on elderly population, like muscle wastage, HMB, right back to the start of the podcast. That's fantastic with people with like burns victims, people with muscle wastage, sarcopenia, cancer patients, but no one really trialed it in athletic populations until Muscle Tech sponsored a few studies, and we know how well they went back in the day. So it's very interesting that you're right. It's very hard to find actual good solid data, and bodybuilders are some of the few meticulous people who will actually do it. I think, and it's why a lot of I
actually still sell HMB in my store and still use it myself.
Wow. Wow.
What brand makes it?
Transcend makes pure HMB specifically at my request. Hang on. Hold on for 1 second there.
Well played. Yeah, go get it. I'm really intrigued to see. Did you? That would have been quite big though in your early competing years though, Nick, wouldn't it?
HMB, no, that didn't come in till after. So that came in. It was really EAS. Bill Phillips and EAS was one of the first to market with HMB. So that wasn't until about 97, 98. Musashi were the first to have it in Australia. They were the first to have creatine. They had creatine before EAS as well. Musashi were the first to have a lot of things.
Yeah, wow.
I think Musashi had creatine. I reckon it would have been 93 was the first time I had creatine on hydrate. Is that it? Let's have a look.
That's it. There you go. So that's HMB by Transcend. That's specifically sourced for me.
Powder or capsules?
It's a powder. It's a pure powder. You get 1 gram of pure HMB per serve. So, and we get, what do we got? 150 grams there. So, yep, I use that myself and I still sell this to customers. I get a lot of the old school guys coming in excited that I still have HMB. Whether it's the nostalgia, whether it's because it works, I don't know. Do I really care? At this point, no. There's a lot of great stuff I'm using that I know works, that we have the science to back. But for me, it's a little bit of a throwback. You know, it reminds me of when I was, 16 years old in the gym, talking to those older guys, finding out about how to build muscle and stuff like that. And that was a really exciting time for me, I think there's something to be said for that a lot of the young guys are missing now. When I started out in the gym, 15, 16-year-old kid in there, we used to approach the guys who were in their 20s and in their 30s and ask them, what do I do? What should I take? What should I be lifting? What's my training? What should that look like? And we really were sponges for the information of this older generation, and they passed down a lot of the knowledge to us guys. And that's how we learned everything that we know about bodybuilding, and that's how we learned how to grow muscle. It seems like the younger generation now doesn't really give a stuff what the next generation up thinks or the generation beyond that. They're very happy to watch a YouTube clip with an influencer who is maybe the same age as them, or, doesn't have that experience or doesn't have, any accolades, and they just don't really care. And it's like, I would be happy to pass down my knowledge to some younger guys, but the attitude that is given to me I'm speaking very generally here. I'm sure there's some young guys out there who are really great stand-up guys and are going to be receptive to that. But I feel like it was a different scene.
I think they're probably platforms like this, hopefully, are sort of somewhat substituting, I think, I in a lot of cases. I think you're right. A lot of people, instead of going up and asking in a gym now, they'll go away and look up a relevant piece of content, a podcast, a YouTube video, and try and learn on it. I think the keenness to learn is still there, at least, which is good. That's why I think our industry is cool, and that we can we've afforded the luxury to play with these really unique, botanicals, amino acids, fun things we can formulate with, because people are reading more and really interested in this stuff now. The consumer's very educated now, which is great, and it allows us to sort of play in a different space than we used to be able to. But yeah, I know.
See, Nick, I play the part of the cranky old guy on this podcast who says how crap the industry is now, and how it's not the same as it used to be. And Will's the one who goes, "Hang on, Stu, you don't want to upset our entire listener base."
Well, no, Stu, I noticed you. You caught yourself. You said, "I'm just generally speaking. It's not all young guys. I'm sure there's some." You caught yourself, mate.
Because I'm fresh. I'm not yet jaded. I'm only like 10 years in. You guys are all decades ahead of me. So I've still got a little bit of less than jaded attitude to it. But I love it. I love listening to it. You guys are passing on me now. I'm enjoying it. I love it.
Hey, I'm not that much older than you,
So you're not. You're only about 4 years older now. I'm 30.
Well, I'm coming up on 35 now. So, but look, let's just say that we all love bodybuilding. We all love supplementation, and there's definitely some changes that have happened. The scene isn't the same as it was, and that's the nature of anything. Things always do, and things must change. And that probably is a good lead in to ask you, I guess, as our last sort of topic to chat about, Nick, what major changes have you seen, say, between, the 90s, the early 2000s, I guess the 20 teens and now? How has the industry evolved? What's the trend that you're seeing, and where do you see it going?
God, good question. I mean, in the sort of 80s, when I started getting into it, or the late 80s, it was really, again, I think it was probably 5 supplement brands. There was Peter McCarthy's Balance before he sold to Health Minders or Nutrilife. So there was that. There was Nutrilife, owned by Wayne Galash and Brian Coffey. There was Masashi, started in 83, 84. And there was Weeder. Someone was distributing Weeder, or Health Minders was distributing Weeder. There was really 4. Then Aussie Bodies came a little bit later. So from that to now, and Max's were the early player as well. I think they've been going about 30 years now, Keith and Paul down there in Melbourne. So big shout out to those guys too. I really got a lot of time for the Max's boys, gentlemen. So I think the biggest thing was the invasion of the American brands. And again, we always saw them in the magazines. We always had the American magazines, and we would see their great gyms. There was no Hammer Strength back here. It didn't exist. Life Fitness and Hammer Strength didn't exist here. So you'd see the Avunco dumbbells, the Hammer Strength. You'd see it all in the magazines. You'd see all the American supplements. And we were influenced by Joe Weider's professionals that were holding Mega Mass 2000. We were influenced, because Weider used to put all those guys on a Weider contract, and they'd be training the Weider principles using the Weider supplements as how they're getting so big. So it was a really, American products started coming in, and demand was obviously there because that's what we were all seeing. I was working in the industry at the time, and I was able to have a lot of intelligence on raw materials, quality of raw materials. The Masashi amino acid formulas were, it was nothing like that. The amino acids that were coming out of the US were calcium caseinate made into tablets. So it's like, hang on, I can go buy this stuff. I can take a 30 or 40 gram serve. It's the same as 30 or 40 tablets. They were pure calcium caseinate made into tablets, being passed off as amino acid tablets. So, but again, the marketing and the miseducation was everywhere when the American products started to come in. From that to see all the pre-workouts with the No Explode, the first one to come in. I did a pre-workout which I never released in liquid form. Had glycerol in it, so you'd get this cell volumizing. I never released it. It was right at the start. It was probably 2000, 2001.
Nick, I had the chance to see one of your early pre-workouts, and I think you had some manufacturing issues with it, and it turned to like rock solid concrete.
That was the first site. Yes, the first site. Yes. That was a bit of a that was a commercial one, actually, because Jack 3D was here for a very short period of time in a very limited capacity. I took the product because a couple of the stores were raving about it, and they gave me some. I took the product, drove to the gym, got to the gym, sat in the car park with anxiety, worried that everyone was going to start staring at me, and sat there for about 20 minutes trying to talk myself to go in. I finally went in. Tried to train, but I was all over the place. It was too strong. It was too much for me. But it was really popular. Very short period of time. It got pulled for whatever reason. I can't remember what it was. It got pulled. I don't know if the distributor had problems. Not sure. So that's why I brought out my site, and the beta-alanine with, they had the caffeine, the creatine, all the basics in there. Very similar. Instead of having you know what it was? It was DMAA was geranium extract. That's what they were doing it, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Get around things. So I didn't have that. I put caffeine instead. So that's what that one was. But with the beta-alanine and being so hydroscopic, it didn't take long before it turned into like a house brick. It was good home security.
It was, and it wasn't. I remember it was. It wasn't micro-dosed either. Like the you remember the Jacked used to have this for the time. It was a very, very small scoop, and you had every other pre-workout on the market. Well, there wasn't. There was like NO Explode, I think, was the only other one out. But the tub was a good this size, and Jack was the only one doing that. Mike, you kind of were in between, right? You kind of weren't as big as the NO Explode scoop, but you weren't as little as the Jack scoop either.
Right. Well, I wanted to put the maximum amount of arginine, glycine, and creatine in there. I wanted to put the maximum amount of those things in, along with a couple of other ingredients. But again, I had to comply with the supplementary sports food code with 2.9.1. So, I put the maximum of all those ingredients in. So I came to about a 5 gram serve.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing there. And it's funny, isn't it, how we've come full circle and we've gone back to like my latest site, cheeky plug here, my latest site, the 3.0. I'm really happy with this product, but it's 11.6 gram serve. just
Yeah,
under.
I had the chance to try that the other day. Actually, love it. Really, really good. Yeah, really good. I really, really like it. So,
Awesome.
you know, I'm good friends with Amy and Justin and stuff like that. So I'm pretty pretty close.
Yeah, the intro. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty close to the Gentech circle there. I don't actually stock Gentech in my store. I've never had anyone approach me and
We'll have to do something about that at the end. I wish I could sack him.
But no, really, really good product. So, you know, like as we've said many times, we're not a commercial body here, but hey, we love supplements. So if there's a good one out there and we like it and we've tried it, I'm happy to say go out there, give it a go, guys, because it's pretty cool and it's, you know, you're getting it out there now, right?
Yeah, I love this product. And like what you were saying before, Stu, you did ask me early on, what are your basics? What do you think is important? I mean, for me, food's number one. And if you're eating your 5 to 6 meals a day with a good balance of protein, unprocessed carbs, and essential fatty acids and plenty of fiber, if you're doing that, you're going to maintain an anabolic state or a positive nitrogen balance most of the time. The only time you're really going to go catabolic is during training and, you know, maybe the last couple of hours of sleep. Hence the casein before bed. Yes, it's functional, but it's a great lifestyle product. But for me, the most important nutrient timing is intra-workout nutrient timing. But for me, pre-intra, post really is all most guys and girls need, pre-intra, post. You don't need a pre if you're eating well, but if you like a pre, like most of us do, by all means, take one. Take something that's not going to kill your adrenals. Take one that's not going to kill your appetite. You know, you take one that's too high in stim, you're unable to focus. You're not going to get as effective as a workout as normal. You're going to kill your appetite. You know, heavily hinder your recovery. You're going to, you know, interrupt your sleep patterns, which is heavily going to hinder your recovery. So be mindful with your pre that it gives you what you want it to do. And that is performance, but without all the negative side effects. That's what I've tried to do with Psyched. And then the intra, amino acids, carbohydrates, and creatine during. You know, as simple as it is, for me, it's still very, very profound to be able to shuttle amino acids and creatine into muscle cells whilst you are training, whilst the sympathetic nervous system is hammering. You know, Will, you keep talking about you've got a good understanding of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system's hammering over and above if you're using a pre-workout. So to be able to absorb nutrients across the gut lining and small intestine, get them to the working cells and get them into the cells. I mean, the carbs, the insulin response to the carbs will help drive them into cells. The insulin response to the carbs will help to buffer the cortisol production, you know, that you're going to struggle to come back from. Something that was really interesting with that was Dr. Tony Fitton. They used to call him Dr. Steroid. He was a world powerlifting champion in the early 80s. He was a doctor in the US and used to look after a lot of professional athletes with their cycling. He talked to me on the phone. I got to speak to him through the contact with Musashi, with Tim. I spoke to him on the phone. This is back when I moved to the Gold Coast in 93. And he talked about Tim Belknap, an insulin-dependent diabetic bodybuilder. He talked about Belknap and said, this guy has worked out how to use insulin. I'm not a big advocate of insulin. It gives you the thick skin and the softer, rounder, fuller-looking muscle, which I don't appreciate as much these days as I did the bodybuilders of the 90s and earlier, their hardness and condition. I much more appreciate that. And the insulin sort of has ruined that. But Belknap learned how to use his insulin. And I said, how's that? And he said, well, he would take it before training. The guy would put on 5 pounds by the end of the workout. Now, Keith Ellis from Max's lived and trained with Belknap back in Venice Beach years ago and did security with him. Sorry, didn't live with him. He trained with him, one-on-one with him together, training partner, and did security. He said, Nick, the guy would blow up and go down like you've never seen. He said, it was unbelievable. I told him this story. So Belknap would put on 5 pounds during the workout. And I said, what's the deal? Like, it's not muscle. And he goes, well, he would have his insulin before training. And I don't advocate this, but he was a diabetic. So he would do that and take 100 grams of glucose during training and get these crazy pumps and look twice the size by the end of training. So I knew back then I was using Musashi amino acids, the branch chains and essentials. I'd spoon them in before training and I'd spoon them in during. Because again, I thought if I can feed my body amino acids, protein during training when I can't digest food, it's the next best thing to put in the drip in my arm, which, you know, you probably get, it wouldn't look quite right in the gym. It gets in the way when you do bicep curls. So but with the aminos, I thought, well, I produce my own insulin when I take in sugars. So I simply used to wash it down with a Gatorade. So I'd have a Gatorade with amino acids during training. Masashi then got creatine, so I put that in the stack. So I find it absolutely profound still. And it's why P2P is my favorite product, to consume digestible carbs, digestible or absorbable, I should say, amino acids and absorbable creatine. Even taking 3 grams of creatine, it's like what you get from a kilo of raw steak, kilo and a half of cooked steak. You can take that isolated. To me, this is true performance enhancement. And there's supplements you can buy on the counter. I mean, the quality of them would obviously vary with the quality of raw materials, but, and there's a lot of them maybe a little more or less confectionery based. I think a lot of the American products have been more confectionery based because their market demands that the products taste like confectionery. Not saying they're bad quality, but a lot of flavor and sweetness and colors in them because their market desires that. But for us, we give you what works. No bullshit. We give you the ingredients that work. So to take something like that during training and then a very fast digesting hydrolyzed WPI post-workout, I think the pre-intra post, if you've got that stack going on, a pre that suits you and doesn't burn you out, doesn't kill your appetite, doesn't eat into your sleep, an intra that contains carbs and aminos and creatine, I use it right up until a week out of a show, till I carb deplete. So I don't swap to amino. Justin does. He swaps to the amino lean 4 weeks out just because he likes to suffer. Just because he likes to suffer, dude. I don't think it's got a lot to do with his conditioning because, I use the carbs and all my natural boys too, Joel Ramintus, Ben Wortley, Nathan Wallace, use P2P right up until we carb deplete a week out of the show. So P2P during doesn't hinder your ability to burn body fat. You don't burn body fat during training. The whole point of weight training, especially when you're getting ready for a show, the whole point of weight training is to maintain or increase performance and strength. So you at least maintain muscle on restricted calories and even build muscle. So the whole purpose of weight training is not about burning body fat. You don't burn fat during weight training. So fuel your body to perform, especially when you're dieting. Most guys and girls will say, no P2P during my contest prep, I go to straight aminos. I'm like, suicide, this is the time you need it. Paul, if you're having a single serve, it's only 20 grams of carbs. Pull 20 grams out of the rest of your day of carbohydrates. Makes no difference to your caloric and carbohydrate intake. Fuel your body to perform when you're training because you're most likely slightly glycogen depleted from your low carb diet. You're under calories and your performance suffers. So don't go in there going lighter, going high rep, thinking you're going to get shredded and burn body fat. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Train hard, train heavy, try and maintain your strength whilst you're not increase it.
Something, it's so interesting you say that because I was chatting to Milos Sarcev about this, and Milos used carbs right up until comp. He actually didn't carb deplete, and you see some of the condition that Milos was able to achieve was pretty amazing. Also, very, very into the insulin side of things that you were talking about. Probably one of the...
That's when his physique got spoiled. Later in his career, he spoiled his physique, as far as I'm concerned.
I totally agree with you.
Levroni, Dennis James looked like Levroni. Those guys, when they turned pro, dude... And then they turned. Milos would get hold of a lot of them.
Milos did. Milos put a lot of the pro bodybuilders of the 90s onto the insulin, and still advocates it a lot now. But regardless of that, pulling the carbs out, I totally agree with you. Is like absolute suicide for maintaining that muscle that you have, maintaining the volume and that glycogen that you really, really need to have in those muscles. Unless your goal is to deplete muscle tissue, which I don't think anyone's in, it doesn't make sense to take those carbs away at that point, right?
Exactly.
Right. That's a really unique insight. That's fantastic. And seeing, because you're right, you've kept carbs in that for a lot longer. Most of the other market, is sort of playing in the carb-free intro. Like it's quite. P2P has been one of the few guys that have still had carbs in it for as long as I can remember training. So I'm 9 years this month. And that's awesome to see that it's sticking by it on the bright side. But I think we've pretty much taken up as much time as we could hope to ask of you, Nick. So thank you very much for lending your insights in business, training, nutrition, SUPs. That was an absolutely cracker episode. Hopefully I think our listeners will get a lot of value out of that. So thank you for spending an hour 40 with us.
Wow, was it now 40? My
yeah,
God.
flew by. I didn't
Absolutely.
realize.
I knew it was going to be a long episode with Nick, because I've watched some of your other podcasts there, Nick, and you just, when you start to talk, you really do have this way of kind of drawing us in, and it's, I don't know what it is, but really, really interesting having you on, mate. And I'm sure that we've said this to a lot of guests, but when we have an episode that we really enjoy, I think the plan is to get you guys back on for an episode too, because you just can't cover everything in one episode. But absolute pleasure having you on, mate. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, my pleasure, guys. Thank you, Stu. Thanks, Will. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Keep up the good work. And what's the name of your store again, Stu?
Universal Supplements.
Universal Supplements in Wollongong.
Yep,
mate,
that's the one.
Going to be in touch. We'll get you a couple of tubs of psych down there and get some P2P on the shelves.
All right, mate. I look forward to hearing from you guys. Thanks so much for coming on. And on that note, we'll call it an episode.